You want to get a chumash, you can. Before we begin, I just want to share something. Someone sent me a clip of a woman who, I don't know who she is. She does some sort of events, a religious woman that a non-Jewish worker who helps her with the events asked her, doesn't make sense. Why do Jews care so much about each other and help each other all the time? And she answered a very beautiful answer. She said, she quoted a Rashi, that's a major commentary on the Torah, before the giving of the Torah, where it says that, he says the Jewish people were there, ki'ish echad b'leiv echad, like one man with one heart. So therefore he says we're connected to each other. So even if we don't know each other, one soul, one heart. When family loss, one hurts, all feel it. One celebrates, we all feel it. And what was interesting, she pointed out that the word ke'ish, like one man, the letters of ke'ish are the same letters of the four people in the Bibas family that unfortunately 3 out of the 4 they were all kidnapped and 3 out of 4 brutally murdered. So ke'ish, the kaf stands for kefir, one of the children. Aleph stands for Ariel, another one of the children. Yarden stands for the husband, and Shiri stands for the mother. So just it was an interesting idea, and I thought I'd pass it on to you. Okay. Only hear good news. This week is Parsha Tetzaveh. The outline is not 100% accurate because it's also another reading. We take out a second Torah scroll for Parsha Zachar, which is the Parsha that we remember what the wicked nation of Amalek attacked us. And, but, so we'll talk about that for a moment. The concept of Amalek being wicked and that they should be destroyed is an important idea. It's not, doesn't fit in with the modern lexicon. The concept of right, wrong, and holy are not words that are commonly used in the modern lexicon. Though I think with Hamas, at least some people would be willing to say they are wicked, they're evil, and that trying to save the hostages is a good thing. But the wicked nation of Amalek attacked the Jewish people for no good reason. And historically, they have this pattern of doing that to the Jewish people. As a matter of fact, it's not coincidental that we read Parsha Zachar the Shabbos before Purim. The holiday of Purim is when we celebrate the story of Megillas Esther, which Megillas Esther is the scroll of Esther that talks about the Purim story. We'll find out more about that next Sunday night. We're having a class at 7 o'clock, free class. Join us. There's a flyer on the table next to the candles. Anyone wants to take candles for Shabbos, please do. And the antagonist in the Purim story is Haman. Haman got the king Achashverosh to write a decree that the Jewish people would be killed. And that's, again, very much in sync with the attributes of Amalek. It's where there's no threat to them. It's not an argument over land. It has to do with just being evil for the sake of being evil. The Nazis diverted trains from the Russian front that they needed extra soldiers there so that they can continue killing out the Jews. So it's like transcends logic a little bit about this. So we remember the wicked nation of Amalek. We have a mitzvah to wipe out Amalek. We do not know who is Amalek today. We can just know there's certain people that have the characteristics of Amalek. Eva, you want to move over a little bit? You're sort of hiding behind the thing, if you'd like. Thank you. Okay, he moved over. It's fine. Thank you. So that's an extra Torah reading. It's one of 4 special readings. This past week we had Parsha Shkolim, with the half shekels that the Jews donated, and this one we have Zachar, which is remembering about Amalek, and that's a fulfillment, by the way, of a biblical commandment to remember what God, to remember what the wicked nation of Amalek did, and that's going to be in the second Torah scroll. The first Torah scroll, we're going to read Parsha Tetzaveh, which is found on page 464 in your handy Art Scroll Chumash. It's chapter 27, verse 20, and it has 7 commandments on it, 4 positive and 3 negative, so which we're going to talk about that. So the parsha starts off, Va'ata Tetzaveh, and you should command this Bnei Yisrael, the Jewish people. When it's saying Va'ata, and you should command, who is it referring to? Who should command? Huh? Moshe. God is telling Moshe, you should command, right? So what's interesting is, of all the sections in most of the Torah, Moshe's name is mentioned, with the exception of Chumash Bereshis, the book of Genesis. Why isn't Moshe's name mentioned in Bereshis? He wasn't born yet, right? And Chumash Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, Moshe's name is not mentioned that much because most of it he said. But in Shemos, Vayikra, and Bamidbar, in the 3 middle books, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, Moshe's name is mentioned at least once in each of the Torah portions, with the exception of Parsha Tetzaveh. His name is not mentioned. Why is it not mentioned? So, what? You're correct. What happened was, we're going to learn about next week about the sin of the golden calf. And God was very upset about the Jewish people sinning with the golden calf. And Moshe was pleading on their behalf. And when God said he wants to destroy the Jewish people, Moshe said, if you do that, take me out of your book. I don't want to be mentioned in the book. Even though God said that the Jewish people will come from him, because he didn't mess up. So, in other words, he could have said, oh, wow, I'm going to be the head guy now, right? Comes from me. All the Jews come from me. And what ended up happening was God, he said, no, he tried to defend the Jewish people. And God said, oh, you don't want to be in the book? Okay. And God takes him out of this portion and doesn't have his name mentioned. And where he says this is in Exodus 32, verse 34. But words have consequences. So why, out of all the portions, is this the one that Moshe's name isn't mentioned? Well, number one, this week is going to be Zayin Adar, the 7th day of Adar, which is significant because that's the day Moshe was born and Moshe died. The 7th day of Adar is when Moshe was born, Moshe died. So Moshe said, Misifreich. Another answer is Misifreich, from your book. And Mesefer Chaf, if you break up the word, it's the 20th portion. So this coming week is the 20th portion. So God took it literally and said, Misifreich, Mesefer Chaf, from the 20th portion, I'll take you out of that portion. Another way of understanding it is this is the portion that deals with the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, which really Moshe was supposed to be the high priest. But when he was saying to God that he doesn't want the job of going down to Egypt, he lost it, and it was given to his brother Aaron instead. And then there is a positive way of looking at Moshe's name being taken out of the text, and that is that you were willing to sacrifice for the Jewish people, and you negated yourself. So Va'ata Tetzaveh, and you should command, you become part of the Torah. You will be part of the Torah, and your name, your individuality is taken away in a good sense because you were willing to sacrifice for the Jewish people. So I'll go through the four answers why out of all portions this week. There's some other answers too, I'm sure, but one is because Moshe's birthday and day of death is in Zion Adar in the this week. Also, Mechenino Misifrech, take me out of your book. Misifrech is Misefer Chaf from the 20th book, the 20th portion. It's the parsha that deals with the Kohen Gadol, and also the positive way of looking at it is because he was willing to sacrifice himself to save the Jewish people. So God said, now you become part and parcel of the Torah itself. This is a very nice idea. Okay, so the first section of Parsha Tetzaveh deals with taking pure olive oil to kindle the lights of the menorah. And that means that we don't get any pieces in it. It's the first squeeze of what comes out. The purest comes out from the first bang of the olives. And that's how you should kindle the lights. And this is a important idea that we are compared to the oil. Because what happens when you take oil and you pour it into water? And rises to the top. And that's the goal about who we're supposed to be. We're not supposed to mix with the nations of the world and keep our identity and ideally live a good life properly so that we rise to the top. All oil also illuminates the light of Torah, and our job is to be a light unto the nations and how we behave. Oil doesn't come out naturally. We have to prepare and we have to put pressure. And sometimes to be the best that we can be, we have to take a little pressure too. So most of the parsha that we're going to deal with is, well, before I get to that, I do want to point out something. In the first verse, it says, now you shall command the children that they shall take for you pure pressed olive oil to kindle the lamp continually. What does that mean, continually? Well, yes, there was a lamp that stayed lit all the time, but the menorah was lit every night. So what does continually mean in this context? I'll change the word a little bit, consistently. And that's an important lesson for us to learn about trying to be consistent. Consistent means that we do the same thing over and over and over again. And not that, well, when I'm in the mood, I'll do this. Nah, I'm not in the mood. I'm not going to do this. To be consistent in what we're doing. If I'm in the mood, I'll come to class. If I'm not in the mood, I won't come. If I will go to services, I'll wake up late, whatever. And this is the idea of trying to find something in Judaism, and everybody on their level, to find something. What am I going to be consistent about? And that's a great, great thing. What can I commit to be consistent about? But the rest of the parsha, most of the rest of the parsha is dealing with what's called the Big Day Kahuna, the clothing of the Kohanim. The Kohanim are the priests. Those are Aaron and his descendants who have to do the work in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, and years later in the temple. And this is a special line of the Jewish people. It's from the tribe of Levi, but it's only a certain part of the tribe of Levi. Like I said, it's Aaron's descendants that had to wear special garments in the Mishkan and in the Beis Hamikdash. The regular Kohanim wore 4 garments, which were a shirt, pants, belt, and hat. The Kohen Gadol had 8 different garments, and we're going to talk about those 8 different garments. I will tell you just something interesting. The verse that it says, going back to the oil, it says kasis lamar, pressed for lighting. In the first verse of the portion. Kasis lamar. And the word kasis, kaf saf yud saf, the yud saf at the end, 410, that's the numerical value of 410 is how many years the first temple was, and kasis kaf saf 420 was how many years the second temple was. So embedded in the verse is a little allusion to the two temples and how many years they would be standing. So that's just interesting. So what are the 4 different types of clothing? So if you look closely, if you have it in front of you on the art scroll on page 467, there's the artist's rendition of the ephod. The ephod was like an apron-like garment that had straps going over his shoulders and had stones that the Kohen wore on top, which had the names of the tribes in it. Then you have the me'il, which is made out of blue wool with gold bells and pomegranates on the bottom. There was the tunic made out of linen. Then on page 469, you have the choshen, the choshen. The choshen is the breastplate. And the breastplate had 12 boxes in it with, again, the names of different beautiful stones with the names of the Kohanim, the names of the tribes engraved in it. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. There was something called the Urim V'Tumim. If you look on page 470, you see that the choshen, the breastplate, had like a pocket in the back. And that had God's name in it. And they could go over to the leaders could go over to the Kohen Gadol and ask him questions, and miraculously the letters of the tribes would light up, and he would get an answer that way. We'll talk about that as well. Took on page 472, you have the bells and the pomegranates on the back, on the bottom of the me'il. Here you have on page 473, the Kohen Gadol wearing most of the garments, and including on that is the tzitz, which was said Kodesh Hashem, holy to God, that he wore on his forehead and was tied over his hat. And that is most of the Big Day Kahuna. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Now, why is it important to have something to be able to ask? Because life is confusing, and that's why it's very, very important to have a rabbi mentor that you can go to and ask personal questions to, not only Jewish law questions, but personal questions that have a perspective that you don't have. I had a woman call me one time, and she used to discuss stuff with me all the time, and she said, how do you get answers for me? So I mistakenly, jokingly said, I have a rabbinic dartboard. And when you ask me questions, I throw the darts at the thing. She was so sad. What? My life is in your hands and you're using a rabbinic dartboard? And I kept on going a little bit. I said, if you want, you can get your own on Amazon. She was going crazy. It took me a long time to go, just kidding. It was a joke. There's no rabbinic dartboard. Relax.
You could say the Ouija board.
Right. And the real answer is that hopefully it's Siyata D'Shmai, divine help, that divine insight that God hopefully will give me the right insight. And I pray for that Hashem should help me to when people come to me for advice, that I should be able to give them the right advice. But that the Urim V'Tumim was an important thing. Now, interestingly enough, Aaron was the first Kohen Gadol. He was the first high priest. Why did he get the merit to wear it? Because he had no qualms about his younger brother getting the leadership role, and even in his heart, it didn't bother him. He didn't mind. So that's very big. Now, the clothing of the Kohen Gadol atoned for sins. The shirt was an atonement for the murders that were not prosecuted. The pants for sexual immorality, the me'il, the bells and the pomegranates. The bells were for things we said which we shouldn't have said, like lashon hara, and the pomegranates that were quiet for things, and that's an art form, knowing when to be quiet and knowing when to speak. And most of the time, people have it reversed. When they should be quiet, they speak, and when they should speak, they're quiet. And that's takes a lot of art to learn when and what to say what. The mitznefes, the hat, is for arrogance. When we keep our head too high, then the hat gives us a little humility to remind us to not to be so boastful. The me'il, as I mentioned, is about speaking ill about others. Anyone remember what a telegram is? Yes. So how do you pay by the telegram? No, I'm asking where you get money from. How does the charge work?
By stereotype.
By how many words you use, right? It's tied to words. You pay by the word. Here's the artist rendition, by the way, of the clothing that kind of, and take a look at that. Gotta go. Take care. All the best. Here's the artist rendition of it. So this is the post and breastplate and the ill. This is the ill with this is the ephod and the ill. This is where the bells and the pomegranates on the bottom. So the Chofetz Chaim says we should think about our words because we pay for every word we say, just like by a telegram.
What is the last time this was worn?
In the temple.
Oh,
That was it. And so we don't have those garments yet. As a matter of fact, one of the things Achashverosh did was is he made a party to celebrate his third year of being king, and he invited the Jews, and Mordechai said, "Don't go," but the Jews felt, "Well, the king's invited, maybe I should go." And he used many of the vessels and clothing of the Kohanim to make fun of it at the meal, which is part of why the Jews got into hot water with God. What had happened was the prophet had said that they're going to get out of the exile in 70 years, and according to his calculation, the 70 years were over. So he said, "Yeah, God, you're not going back."
Rabbi,
Yes,
what was wrong with his calculation? Where was he off? Like why?
because it just was off. When you started, when you count 70 and you start from the wrong spot, then you're going to get wrong. Then you're going to be wrong. Hashem has his calculation, and it's going to work. So now, interestingly enough, the Levium, the Levites, did not have special garments. And we're going to talk about that soon. So I will tell when I asked this question once in the synagogue, what did the Levites wear? So one guy raised his hand, Levi's. Okay. Now, actually, the one who invented it, anyone know who invented Levi Strauss? The word is Levi Strauss. That's what Levi is from. That's where the name Levi is, Levi. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So the parsha also talks about the inauguration of the Kohanim for 7 days. So I'd like to read what the art school has on it from the Zion Torah. The head plate, which said Kodesh Lashem, holy for God. It's remarkable the Kohen Gadol, who had no political or military powers, described as wearing a crown, while a crown is never mentioned in the chapter of the Jewish king. To the contrary, the king's distinguishing character was that he had to write his own Torah scroll and carry it with him all the time. This phenomenon teaches us the source of true power. The crown is the sanctity of the Kohen Gadol, but the king must derive his values from the Torah. Just a very beautiful, beautiful idea. Also, we also have at the end of the portion is the Mizbeach HaKtoras, which is the altar, the second altar. If you remember, it was last week we had the one that was what the sacrifices on, and here the artist's rendition of the other one that was inside that was burning for the spices, the incense. And the idea there is a beautiful one. The idea of creating an atmosphere. It smelled good, and to create an atmosphere in our own home. I'm not talking about using a deodorizer. What I'm referring to is how do we create a holiness atmosphere in our home? What we allow in, what we don't allow in. There was a couple that I'm very close to that used to live in LA, and they asked me to come to their home. They wanted to check on certain things in the house, and I saw that they have a big picture of the Beatles on the wall. I said, time to take that down. They said, why? We got it as a gift. I said, put up a picture of a great rabbi, not of the Beatles. And they complied and actually gave them a picture of a great rabbi with a book about him. And it said, because that creates an atmosphere. It's a reflection of what our values are. And what we talk about, the atmosphere in the house, the language we use, what's a Shabbos table like? Is it talking about the business week, or is it talking about the Torah portion of the week? There's a way of changing the atmosphere in the house. Is it positive? Is it loving? Is it caring? So the Ketores, the burning of the incense, is a symbol of what do I do to create a holy atmosphere in my own environment. And that's a very beautiful and powerful idea. The topic of clothing is important. And because the Torah view is our dress is a reflection of who we are on the inside. If a person doesn't dress modestly, then that reflects that they think they're a body. And I want my body parts to be showing. But if there's something deeper going on, and that's the clothing of the Kohanim was definitely a symbol of that. Tell you an interesting story. There's a woman named Wendy Shalit. She was a secular attractive Jewish girl on a college campus. And the college campus decided to make unisex bathrooms. And she was very upset about that. But it was, it was at the beginning of the craziness that goes on with the difference between the genders. And she wrote an article about it. And eventually the article was published in Commentary Magazine. And eventually she wrote a book called Return to Modesty. And in it, she had a theory that really women generally are modest, but because of what society puts the pressure on, they let go of that. And interestingly enough, this sparked her own interest in Judaism. She eventually became a religious woman who now got married, covers her hair, wears modest clothing. Fascinating that modesty would bring her to Judaism. This is not a usual path to become religious. But the book was Return to Modesty. And again, she wrote this book before she became religious, but she's written articles since. It's very, very interesting. And the idea is we're not into wearing burqas. a person can dress in an attractive way, but not attracting. And this idea is a very important idea that our dress is a reflection of what our inner self is. And the idea of, a lot of performers there's a term for it, a garment, I wrote it down because I forgot what it's called, malfunction. A garment malfunction sounds like it's a machine. A garment malfunction happens when you make bad choices about what you're going to wear, and that's not, and I'll conclude with 2 points, just an interesting story. Actually, first, before I say the story, I'll say the other point. The Torah says that people are careful about what they eat, but they should be also very careful about what they think about and what ideas they expose themselves to. And he says that's why the menorah, which represents the intellect and the Torah, had to be pure oil. You have to make sure it's really pure. You're not getting diluted with other concepts and other ideas. There was a woman who was the food editor for the LA Times. And she would go to restaurants and write reviews of the restaurants. And she was very popular. So much so that she got a call from the New York Times that they want to hire her. And she took the position and started working for the New York Times and doing the same thing. And she noticed every restaurant that she went into, she got amazing food and amazing service. And she says, something's weird going on here. And then she figured out that they had her picture by the door. It's New York. They're not sleeping. They knew that she may come in. And therefore, whenever she came in, she was treated royally, and which undermined her ability to be objective about the restaurant. So she wrote a book about this and included recipes and this and that. But then she decided that before she wrote the book, she said she's can't come in like I am the editor of the New York Times book food review. So she would disguise herself as a homeless lady, as a this lady, as a that lady. And this way the people didn't know it was her. And she would get the real scoop of what the restaurant was really like. And she did this for quite some time. And then she quit the job because she said, I am busy acting in a certain way and it's not me. And I'm becoming transformed into those other people. And I don't like that. I have to be a nasty old lady coming into the restaurant. I have to be this, I have to be that. And she didn't like it anymore. She quit the job, even though she was being successful because her trick worked. But to me, it's a fascinating story because it really reflects on the idea of clothing and who we are and what we say. And you could have people wear T-shirts with obscenities on them. It's just the lack of modesty. Just not to. My brother of blessed memory was an executive in Time Life Inc. And one of the executives told him, I'm going to share with you a very important piece of advice. My brother was like looking, yeah, what? He says, don't wear short-sleeve shirts to work. Like, huh? He passed away a few years ago, 3 years ago. But 2 years ago. This was his big piece of advice, because if you wear long sleeve shirts, they take you seriously at work. Again, I don't know what it's like today. Now it's a little bit less so, but the idea was, again, dress for success is a term that's used. And in the Jewish perspective, it's not about success, but dressing in the way that is appropriate for you. I remember another story of Rabbi Czapnik, I think it was. He was a rabbi in Germany pre-World War II. And one of the co-rabbis in the community the Nazis woke him up in the middle of the night and hung him outside in his pajamas. And Rabbi Cheskel Abramsky said, since that time, I don't know if I'll make it, but he went to sleep in his clothing, so that if the Nazis take me out in the middle of the night, it won't be a degradation of the Torah, where I'm being mocked and in pajamas. Let them kill me, let me be wearing my clothing. Just again, an insight of, and that wasn't about his ego, it was about he represents the Torah as the rabbi, and he didn't want to be killed that way. So again, it's just, these are examples of understanding the importance of what we wear, how we wear it, how we look, to make sure that, again, like I said, it needs to be attractive but not attracting. So there's a balance, a difficult balance today, especially, but to walk and act in a way that is appropriate. And that's, by the way, why on Shabbos you'll see Jews wearing special clothing in honor of Shabbos. And again, it's the distinctive clothing in honor of Shabbos. I'm going to wear something nice. I'm going to wear something respectable, and something that that shows my role as a Jew, and as well as the importance of what Shabbos is. All right. Any questions or comments or thoughts? Connie, I had you in mind the Shabbos when they opened the Aron HaKodesh, as per your request.
Oh, thank you, Rabbi Czapnik. By the way, I never thanked you for the Refuah Shalema cards that we received. I apologize. There's just been, it's
Don't worry
madness.
about it. You are busy. It's okay. Don't worry. But I'm glad
You
you
have
got.
no, you should see what's going on in my house, because I just moved out of Crown Heights and now I'm trying to unpack and repack everything, and it's like,
Well, it should be with Mazel and Bracha. That's all. Lots of Mazel and Bracha. If you can,
amen.
let me know what you